Is America an unhealthy place? Let's get into it. So I recently came across this TikTok where a bunch of Icelandic youths are interviewed and asked, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of America? And the answers were not exactly flattering. So here's the video, let's check it out.
What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of America?
School shootings. Obesity. Yeah.
Like unhealthy foods.
Beer?
Yeah, and Captain Morgan.
All right, so we heard school shootings, obesity, unhealthy foods, beer, and Captain Morgan. None of these things are healthy. And let's jump right in. First and foremost, school shootings. This is the saddest one, and one that's very tragic that the United States is known for this. Now, this would require its own video, a very complex topic. There's a lot of factors involved here. We probably don't have time to get into all that in this particular video. But what I will say is at least one part of the conversation is that it's a lot easier to obtain a firearm in the States than it is in other countries. For example, I recently did a video on getting a license to own a gun in Japan. It is a process. It takes years. You have to pass both a written and a performance evaluation at a shooting range. Passing score is 95%. It's not 70% like a lot of tests in the United States. And then you have to undergo a psychiatric evaluation in an actual hospital. You need a clearance from police to obtain bullets. And even after all of this, you still can't buy any firearm. You can't even own handguns. The only guns you can get are shotguns and I think certain types of hunting rifles. And the license that you get only lasts 3 years, then you have to repeat the whole process again. The result of this is that almost nobody has guns in Japan. But that being said, former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was recently assassinated with what? A gun. It was a homemade firearm. So even with these strict gun control policies, people still die as a result of firearm-related homicide. So I'm not sure if we could apply such gun control laws here in the States. I'm pretty skeptical of people who say that that's a good idea, because what would happen to all the firearms that are already out there? And secondly, there's a lot of people, I think over half the country would view such a strict firearm control policy as being against their constitutional rights. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you have any ideas for how we can try to mitigate what is a very tragic thing that the United States is known for, which is school shootings. Now moving on, obesity I think was the second thing that was mentioned, and I don't know about this. I've done some travel in Europe. I've been to England, Germany, France. I can tell you this is not a feature that is unique about the population in the United States. But I do think that there are several factors that lend itself to making it more difficult to maintain weight within a healthy range. And the biggest one is portion size. In the United States, our portions are huge. And I'm so used to it. Obviously, I grew up here, I live here, and I don't really notice it. But then when I go to other countries, I'm not satisfied after the meal. Even if I eat in a nice restaurant, I kind of want to find a McDonald's somewhere on the way home just to get something that's more filling. And I think that's because in the States, we're used to eating until we almost physically can't eat another bite. We eat until we're completely satisfied. And even then, we still try to save a little bit of room for dessert. It's not like this in other countries. I'll use Japan as another example. I'm using this because I recently went there on a family vacation. But in Japan, I think the idea is that you eat with the goal of being 80% full. You don't eat with the idea that you're going to be completely satisfied at the end of the meal. So I think the portion sizes are a big contributing factor to obesity in the United States. And I really notice this with my beverage sizes. I like extra large, supersized sodas. Diet Coke is my favorite. I mean, I'm sure it's diet or whatever. It's not going to increase, or it's not going to contribute to a caloric surplus. But that's another obvious example of how portion sizes are much larger in the States than elsewhere. The next thing we heard is unhealthy food. So I'm not going to argue with this one. In fact, here's a fun little story. For the longest time, I thought that my habit of eating Pizza Hut pizza with the stuffed crust, I thought that eating that constituted a Mediterranean diet because isn't pizza Italian? But that's not exactly accurate. Mediterranean diet focuses more on lean poultry, fish, lean meats, not very highly processed. Very few things are deep fried. A whole lot different from the stuffed crust delivery pizza that I was and still am so fond of. Then the next thing we heard about is beer, and then specifically Captain Morgan. I'm not sure why that brand of rum was so characteristic of America, but those were mentioned. And I don't think I can argue with this one too much because in the United States, let's face it, many people do enjoy a good adult beverage, shall we say. But I think the same is true in a lot of other countries, certainly in Europe and in Asia. It's not at all hard to come by to find alcoholic beverages out there. So I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree with these Icelandic youths that the United States is not exactly known for being a healthy place to live? Or do you think that we're getting a bad rap here? Let me know in the comments down below.